Thank you for coming to our forum, the 2015 forum for the mayoral and city council candidates. First off, I want to thank you for showing up. Secondly, I want to tell you that I am Michael Aaron, QSaltLake's publisher and editor. That should have been first. I was waiting. And I truly want to thank the candidates all for showing up. We've got RSVPs from all of the candidates who we've invited. These are your City Council, Salt Lake City Council, District 4 candidates. Starting with, the furthest from me is Jen Colby. She is an environmental advocate and a co-founder of the University of Utah Office of Sustainability. Easy for me to say. That's why I do Trent. We have Babs DeLay. She's a principal broker of Urban Utah Homes and a longtime mover and shaker in Utah's LGBT community. Sarah Kinton is the owner of Laziz Foods and is the named plaintiff in the now down in the history books Kitchen v. Herbert. We have Miles Petty, who works for the government relations firm in DC and is the owner of the Press Pie Shop. And we have Nate Salazar, chair of the Salt Lake County Hispanic Caucus of the Democratic Party and chair of the East Central Community Council. So the way we're going to work this tonight is I thank you for providing the questions on our Facebook page that we've come up with. We've narrowed it down to 5 of the questions that are very specifically LGBT oriented. We're going to ask each of the candidates to talk, and they each get a minute 30 seconds. And I have this lovely new timer I just downloaded that will go off at a minute 15 seconds, so they know, well, they can ignore the fact that they're supposed to stop. The goal is to get through 5 questions, and we have 45 minutes to do so, and we are starting right on time. Life is good. So I'm going to go ahead. Question number 1. While controversial across the country, protections for LGBT peoples in public accommodations is an important step to full equality. These protections are being fought by the religious right, saying they limit their religious liberties. Allowing a same-sex couple, for example, to be denied a hotel room or a trans person from shopping for clothes of their gender is unacceptable. What is your plan to gain protections for LGBT people in public accommodations? And we will start with Jen.
Thanks. First off, I'm just pleased to see that we got really good legislation this last year, and which could have gone another way, and a lot of other states don't have nearly as good of protections with this religious liberties issue. So at the state level, we'll just have to continue to advocate and make sure that that isn't eroded in the future, and the city can really advocate for that. I think there are 3 main approaches that the city can take. One is, first off, is city policy and practice. So we can make sure that all our own employees are trained, both have safe zone training as well as inclusion training, and also treat all people well and equally when they come to the city for services. I think that's really core to what we should be doing. I think we're doing a good job. I just want to make sure that those resources are there. Second, the city business licensing process and contracting process can certainly make it explicit that that is a requirement of those doing business in the city. Third, I think there's the softer and sort of positive social approach, which is that this is just good for business. And the city can work with business partners throughout the community, really team up with media campaigns and looking at those businesses that already are there and are already doing the right thing and making a strong case that this is good for our city, it's good for our businesses, and it's good for all of us. So with policy and then with really focusing on the positive norming towards inclusion, I think we can really make great progress as a city. Thanks.
We're just going down the line.
We are.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Jen, good for business. I totally agree with that. Being a business person, a small business person in downtown Salt Lake City. But to coin a phrase, clean up our own home first. I believe that we need to get into all of the city ordinances, all of the city rules and regulations, all of the policies that we have here, and do almost a word search for discrimination, marriage status, sex, gender, and the like, and make our own rules of operation have integrity. Then we can reach out and we can look at the people we do business with and say, this is how we do business, this is how we present, this is how you will do business with us, or you will not do business with us.
Well, I would say that Salt Lake City was obviously the leader in what led to SB 297 this last legislative session. And public accommodations are the last prong to non-discrimination ordinances, and that was unfortunately left out of our own bill here in Salt Lake. And now that we do have statewide protections, I think that it's time for Salt Lake City to step up and include the public accommodation protections for LGBT citizens. And I think to get there, we need to engage the same partners that we engaged when we passed the ordinance a couple years ago, which are the business community. We did about 1.5 years of outreach and engagement with the LDS Church, which is one of the larger players on something like this. And if we can pull them on board, which I believe we can, especially considering the success we had with SB 296, I do believe that we will have the full, robust, non-discrimination ordinance that Salt Lake City deserves.
I think once you start a business, you're in the public sphere, and discrimination just doesn't. We just can't allow for discrimination, whether it be on sexual orientation or religion or race. I think one way we can tackle this is have an advocate in the city government that people can come to if they get mistreated or if they go to a business that doesn't treat them well. So they can come to an advocate in the city government and say, I went to this store and they didn't serve me or whatever, and then have the advocate go directly to the business. And it takes a little bit of tact maybe, but I think there's plenty of people within both the straight community and the LGBT community that can handle that and go to a business and say, look, we've had some complaints, you really need to change that. It's not good for your business, and it's not good for our city. So I think having an advocate in the city government would be great. And I think thankfully things are improving somewhat naturally, and we do need to do what we can to kind of push the process along. But in my, I do own like a little pie shop, and for me it's great to have any customers, So, especially when people come in and they're nice and they're very complimentary, like, well, I don't know why you ever want to turn it away. So I think developing having an advocate in city government and developing kind of that sense in the business community that it's just good for business.
Foremost, I want to recognize that public accommodations is something that I'm very passionate about, not only as a candidate, but as an individual. It's been a #1 platform issue for me. It's been on my website since day one. I talked at length about it in my interview with the Salt Lake Tribune. These things are really simple when you think about them. We can't kick people out of a restaurant because they're Latino, because they're Black. We provide specific accommodations for folks who have disabilities, making sure that there's ADA requirements. These are accommodations that are constitutional, right? This is 14th Amendment stuff, folks. And there's no reason why we can't have those kinds of accommodations reflect our values as a city and include LGBT folks, especially our trans community. This is really, really important stuff. My plan to make sure that we have a public accommodations ordinance is making sure that as a city council person, once elected, we have an obligation to set priorities for the year. My #1 obligation in creating priorities for the city is making sure that we have public accommodations as a priority, one of the 6 priorities that we work on. We have an obligation to make sure that we dedicate staff and the administration to hold them accountable to reflect those values as well. These are the things that I'm going to be working on as a city council person.
15 seconds.
Overall, we have an obligation, and public accommodations is one of my priorities moving forward.
They are so good at staying on time. That's awesome. Thank you very much, and thank you for the reminder back there that can you please turn off your cell phones, or at least turn them down, please. But I would actually like you to have your cell phones on, because we are asking people to comment, not actually ask questions, but maybe comment on what's going on here. So if you could hashtag QLGBT Forum, and our at whatever our Twitter name is at QSaltLake. Second question, and Babs talked on this a little bit, but the city contracts with many companies to provide services. As the city provides equal protections and benefits for its LGBT employees, are you willing to require that companies that the city contracts with to also provide those protections and benefits to its LGBT employees? And we're going to start with Babs, who's already started with this.
All right.
Awesome.
It's just a continuation of this conversation, and everything that everyone is saying so far I think is relevant, and I hope somebody's taking minutes. We're going to need this in about 6 months. Well, actually we need a lot of this here. I'm currently working on a committee with the Jewish Family Services to help protect trans people through the I'll Go With You campaign. Is anyone familiar with that? It's pretty amazing, I must say, because no one should have to feel unsafe using a restroom or other gendered space that conforms with gender identity. Our pledge, and the pledge of us, with passing privilege, offer to be a bathroom buddy, a watch your back person, a stand up for you. I will have your back. I will be your witness. I will go to the bathroom in that same room with you, and I will protect you. That's part of a whole plan of looking at everybody's rights, and unfortunately, it's not going to happen when somebody gets elected here in just a few months. It's not going to happen in 6 months. It's not going to happen in a year. We don't have bathrooms in the city for just people. So again, we need to go in, look at our policies, see who we're missing, see what's wrong, clean those out with a comb, get all those fleas out of there, and start from scratch.
You know, to be honest, I thought Salt Lake City already required this out of the contractors. I could be mistaken, but I think we should look into that because I was under the impression that that was already a requirement for city contractors. But one thing that I think is important is that we as a city step up with our buying power and really lead by encouraging companies to offer not only protections but sensitivity training and other forms of best practices that they can implement within their companies to create a safe space for people who are gay, lesbian, trans, or bisexual. I think it's important that these companies, whether they contract with Salt Lake or anybody else, have the resources available, and I think Salt Lake City as a municipality can really lead and encourage those companies to do so from within. In addition to partnering with other cities like Sandy, Holiday, and others to create more of a region-wide protection policy. And so as city councilman, I would work with those the council people of those cities and see what we could do to create a best practices model for those companies as well.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry, your time's up.
One other thing to add, I think the best way to kind of push LGBT acceptance or integration or whatever is just to know someone who's gay. And so I think it's in the best interest of the city to make sure that contractors protect their LGBT employees and to have some LGBT employees. I think that's the best way that any of us, that any of us really, integrate with each other. I think anyone who's scared of something that's different from them, once they kind of get to know it, it breaks down barriers. And so short answer, yes.
Yes, and currently our city does not require that people and companies that we contract with make sure that they have those same level of standards when it comes to their LGBT employees. This is really important to make sure that our city does contract with companies that share our values as a city and also respect the values that are written into our city ordinances. Right now, our non-discrimination ordinance does not require companies to do that and have those same protections that our city does for their contractors. And we need to fix that. It's imperative that we fix that because, like I said, our companies that we contract need to have that specific requirement when it comes to protecting their employees, especially their LGBT employees. We have these kinds of requirements when it comes to development and construction. Any kind of bid over $10,000 needs to be provided and completed by skilled labor. Not only skilled labor, but companies and organizations that not only require that skilled labor, but also require things like drug testing to make sure that their employees are safe on the job. And we need to make sure that our city is doing the same thing. Easy ways to do this is we need to improve our non-discrimination ordinance in the city so that it has language that reflects those protections for contractors and for their employees who are LGBT. And secondly, we need to make sure that the RFPs that we are receiving from contractors have that kind of language and specificity in it as well. And we also need to change our bid language to make sure that those values are reflected in the work that our city is doing.
Awesome. SLC Nate somehow tweeted while he was on the stage,
Again?
"Don't forget to vote by May." The ballots actually were mailed out today, is that correct?
Yes.
Do I get a shot at this too?
Oh, sorry, oh my God. Can't forget about Jen.
Pretty much.
Go ahead.
At this point, yes, and I guess Derek is absolutely right. The city has enormous buying power, and that is important to leverage where we can. At the University of Utah, I worked closely with our purchasing and contract employees and made sure that we integrated all sorts of energy efficiency and sustainability language in those bid documents, so I know what it takes to get that done. We can certainly do that for LGBT protections and equality. That's not terribly difficult to put in. We may find ourselves, what we should do also is a baseline requirement and then also a narrative, and require contractors to have a narrative description of the positive things that they're doing, and that way we can gauge better. This is what we did for a lot of sort of other sort of sustainability and justice issues at the university. That said, the Utah legislature has a bad habit of thinking Salt Lake City is getting out ahead of the rest of the state and slapping us down on stuff like this. So if anyone remembers, the city did this with the living wage requirement in contract language, and that quickly became illegal for the city to do. So instead, the city can put language in to have a point system that you can give people sort of extra credit as in a selection process, but you can't make it an absolute requirement. So I think we need to approach this collaboratively, and we have a lot of people with good connections throughout the community that can help make sure that the state will keep their hands off our ordinances so that we can lead out as we always do as a city.
Excellent. I'm hearing that Scruff and Grinder are equally split.
Oh, okay.
What is that?
Yeah.
No idea. Whoever they are. Derek, let's start with you on this one. Many of the city's bars catering specifically to the LGBT community are in the Depot District, around 1st and 2nd South, from 4th West of the freeway. Overcrowded homeless services, large expanses of undeveloped space, and vacant buildings not only give the area an unsafe feel, but indeed do contribute to increased crime in the area. What are your hopes and plans to fix this problem? Don't look away when you're not figuring out what you're supposed to be saying.
Well, without diving into a complex discussion on homelessness, I think it's important to recognize that development is coming to the Depot District. I think it's up to City Council and smart developers to make sure that the kind of development is productive and long-standing and worthwhile. I think Babs might agree that we may want to consider some design standards and things that really encourage high-quality development. I think with regard to the Depot District, for so long the LGBT community found refuge on the outskirts of town, and you see this with the gay bars and that are still over there, whether it's the Trap or the Sun Trap or Club Sound or whatnot. Those are areas that we have gone to find community and support. And I think as a city, as we brace for development, which will be good, I believe, as we brace for development, it's important that we do what we can to either mark this community as with historical significance, so that we can celebrate and honor the heritage of Salt Lake's LGBT ancestors and those people who have paved the way for all of the successes that we've had over the last few years. And I think that some sort of historical marker would be worthwhile. Now, obviously, it might not be productive to have the state try and do some sort of marker on that end, but I think the city can really get out the front on this and find a way to create space for new development while honoring our past.
I've been thinking about this area of town quite a bit lately. With all the talk about prison relocation, the background of it is that the land's becoming more valuable where the prison is.
No. Really?
So they want to move the prison. With the idea being that once a prison's moved, we can then create a technology corridor there in Draper, Bluffdale. But I say, why wait for a new prison to be built, the old one torn down before we can start on that? Why don't we make a tech corridor in Salt Lake City? Why don't we work on the gateway, which is struggling, and then this area that's got a lot of open land and everything. Why don't we proactively push for that in Salt Lake City rather than waiting for the state to relocate the prison and then use the land for that, the prison land for that. So I'm open to all kinds of ideas, mundane and crazy, and some might be a little crazy, but I think why not? Why not push for some really good development in that area and help Salt Lake progress and becoming a bigger hub. I mean, there's more venture capital going to Provo and Orem than there is to Salt Lake and Ogden, despite Salt Lake being the hub and being a bigger market. So there's definitely a market there for it. I think that'd be a good place for it.
So I really want to talk about that history. I think that our city for a long time, especially up until the more recent era, there is a very specific history of pushing people who are different and diverse to the outskirts of town, whether that's gay bars, whether that's our Central Cívico Mexicano. This is a reality in our city, and I think people are tired of living in the shadows. I know that I am, based on my own experience growing up here in Salt Lake as an ethnic minority, but we need to set priorities when it comes to city council. The area is prime for development, and a lot of that area is owned by the RDA. And the city council has a huge influence in making sure that that development happens. But more so than actually pushing for development in that area, we need to make sure that there's a master plan that focuses on the development of other areas in the city other than the core downtown. We're working really well when it comes to developing our core downtown, but when it comes to areas like our Depot District, we need to make sure that that is thoughtful and meaningful in the way and the process that we make that development happen. I really think that if we are able to develop that, we will see a lot less of that, kind of pushing people to the side. If that's historical markers, whatever that might be, but we really need to take a strong look and be realistic at recognizing the history of people being pushed to the side, and that shouldn't be happening anymore in our city.
In regards to this issue, I'll bring, yes, Anne, again, a few other ideas to the table. First off, the sort of immediate things the city can do, and then more medium and long term to help solve these multiplicity of issues in this area. First off, we can just make sure that we have adequate patrols and security in this part of town, and that we also work with private businesses to make sure that that is well coordinated and that any issues are quickly addressed. We also can review things like lighting, streetscapes, and that sort of thing, and look at the way city without additional particular development can actually enhance some of that area just on a day-to-day basis. We can also look to see the kinds of things like what the farmers market brought to the Pioneer Park area, what kinds of potential additional events, even if it's just one-off things in the summer, can help enliven the area. And if you bring more people to the street, then we have more safety and security. More broadly, we really need to continue to work hard for more resources at the federal, state, county, city, and nonprofit level to address homelessness and also addiction. We have two overlapping problems, but they're not the same problem. People facing homelessness may have underlying mental health or addiction issues, but the open drug markets are a real problem. We need to get a handle on that. And then finally, Nate's absolutely right. The RDA properties and the private properties are ripe for redevelopment. The market is good. And I think we can have better incentives to encourage private landowners to develop, including perhaps fees on buildings that have been vacant for a long time and just land banked that are really not contributing to our community, and those fees can be put towards these enhancements that we need.
We have time for one last question.
Hi.
Did it again.
I thought I had ADHD. And I think this Thursday is Death Cab for Cutie, and there'll be 40,000 people down there, and that hasn't changed our neighborhood at all. What they do is they clean it up, have a concert, and then it goes back to shit the next day. Sorry. I came out probably 40 years ago when there was only a Sun Tavern and a woman's bar, and both were between South Temple and 2nd South, and both are gone in the 1970s. I know this area. This is where my wife and I live and work, and that is one of the prime reasons that I'm running for city council is because of my neighborhood, the Central Business District. And nothing is going to happen with Gateway because the current owners of Gateway have to decide what they're going to do about it. And the city, the Downtown Alliance, everybody's ready to help them with whatever they want to do. But for right now, it's a mystery if they're going to hold on to it or if they're going to sell it. Locals want it to become, from what polls have said, an entertainment district. Wouldn't that be cool? It already is sort of entertaining. We have the planetarium, the children's museum, and the Cineplex there. But all of the city's efforts right now are going into Regent Street to become the new entertainment area. That is right behind the new Eccles Performance Center of 2,600 seats that no one voted on, but you'll be watching for that entertainment street behind there. Of course, the RDA owns a ton of land, so does UTA around the sound and the trap, and most people don't understand that city council members are the RDA board. So it's your city council that's holding on to land and deciding what to do with that. And right now, they have entered into plans already with Cowboy Partners and with the same people who built the Gateway, Boyer Company, to develop behind the homeless shelter. So that's going to open up a whole bunch of can of worms. But what did Boyer do before? Built the Gateway, made money, sold it, made money. Now he's going to go over just a couple blocks south, and you'll see what's happening in that neighborhood. How's that going to affect our bars? Who knows?
Excellent. Our last question. Many of Salt Lake City's LGBT youth and seniors are living with limited family support. Some of our youth even find themselves homeless and either couch surfing or living on the streets. What can the city do on its own to address these populations, and how can they further efforts and organizations trying to address these issues? Miles, we'll start with you.
The biggest way is right here at the library. There's plans in the works that are being discussed to keep the library open 24 hours a day for the trial phase. For LGBT youth, particularly, have a place to go late at night if they need a safe environment. And it'll obviously apply to anyone, but particularly to LGBT youth. And I think I didn't like this idea at first, before I understood the problem. I thought, why do we want to open the library open for 24 hours to be basically a stopover for homelessness? Why don't we make a place for that and use a place that's not so big or so expensive as the library? But as I got more into the issue, the more I liked it. And it's pointed out to me, people who are homeless come into the library and use the services. And it's not that scary of a place. And I think particularly for LGBT youth that find themselves homeless, the library could be a very safe place for them to come. Of course, there's other things we need to look at as this happens. We need to obviously look at crime in the neighborhoods and here to make sure that it doesn't become a dangerous place, that it stays a safe place. But I think it's certainly worth an experiment. And then do what we can to help the Pride Center and all the others that are giving the services to LGBT youth and wherever we can.
Number one, I think we need to look at this as a systemic problem. Right now, 35 to 40% of our homeless youth in the city identify as lesbian, gay, transgender, and bisexual. That's almost half the population. It's actually pretty on par when you think about the national percentages for homeless youth. And what we're doing right now, I think, is good, but it's not enough. We have the VOA, which provides day drop-in services. We have Salt Lake County Youth Services, which provides emergency shelter. We have the road home. But a lot of our youth, especially our homeless and queer youth, don't feel comfortable in those settings, whether it's because of safety at the road home, whether it's because of a feeling of welcome at Salt Lake County Youth Services, because it seems more like a detention center. Or when you think about the VOA and the drop-in center, our service providers have an 8-hour window to either get parental consent or to call the authorities to have them picked up and taken back home. This is a really, really big issue because we are actually, in a sense, taking youth in for a short period of time and then sending them right back into situations where they're unsafe, where they're being, beaten, or they feel welcome in their own homes. These are really critical issues. As a city, what we need to do to make sure that our youth feel welcome is extending those hours to 72 hours, partnering with the VOA and the development of the new resource center that's going to provide 20 beds during the night for our youth, and also making sure that there's affordable housing available to our youth who transition out of an 18-month period in the 2 facilities that we do have in our city that take in homeless youth.
Nate said it really well, so I will just endorse everything he said, and perhaps add a piece about, since the question addressed youth and seniors as well, there's a lot that the city can do to really help our seniors, some of whom may find themselves in a homeless situation, many of whom may just be living essentially in poverty. And there are many programs the city can do to outreach to help with, both just through our standard mailings that we do, make sure that people realize that resources are there, even from door-to-door outreach for home repairs, for community, for making sure that people realize that there are community resources for them. I think another thing we really need to be sure we're doing is not criminalizing poverty. And so we need to look carefully, and I'd love to get some stats and see where we're at with things like, with the youth on the street, whether people are getting picked up for loitering, for panhandling, for minor things that then get them involved in the justice system unfairly, and that really make their lives that much more difficult. I agree that we really need to be looking at both the legal system that unfortunately sometimes attaches people to parents that won't let them go, finding whether they've got safe havens, and perhaps there are people in the community willing to be informal foster homes for people rather than an institutionalized setting. Maybe some of those seniors who weren't maybe out at some point in their lives would be willing perhaps to take in some of these. Maybe the city's volunteer program can help link people together in a very informal way that would make life better for everyone involved.
And finally, my comments, I'm going to talk more about seniors, but as far as the youth, my wife and I watch the sex trafficking daily on our doorstep. It is vile. It is pathetic. Watching these kids who cannot go to shelter and are terrified to go to shelter, working in the sex trade every single day so they can eat. So, to put my money where my mouth is, several years ago I began tithing, yes, to use a local phrase, to the Volunteers of America. They're one of the main charities that I give to every single month. They draw out of my bank account so that I can try and help make a difference in this community. And they are building a shelter for teens, and I'm going to support it with everything I possibly can. As far as seniors, I specialize in affordable housing, and most of the seniors I know, particularly in the LGBT community, are living in poverty. And thank God for my friend Charles Frost in the audience, who helped create the SAGE program through the Pride Center, who put his fingers on the pulse of so many senior issues that we have here. It just made me cry just to start going on about them. We are all very passionate, and by the way, I'm the only senior running, I think, in this, so I have more passion. Yeah, well, Denise thinks I'm a senior, okay? But if we don't have a city that doesn't put housing as a top priority, particularly for seniors, we have 2 senior high-rises here. One of them last year did not have air conditioning. No. We have to help developers develop senior properties, and right now we're assessing developers fees of $2,800 per unit in unnecessary fees. If you can't get the people with the money to build, we're never going to have senior housing in this town.
It's nice to see that the senior issues are getting a lot of attention because I think they have been overlooked for a really long time. Here in Salt Lake City, I would really like to see us partner with the county to bring senior-directed programming to the senior centers, which are administered by the county. And I think we can really rally Ben McAdams and the county council to push for something like this, because a lot of our seniors are immobile or don't have the resources and the support base that they need in order to find happiness and success in our community, and they are oftentimes left behind. I do have to give a shout out to Charles and others who have put a lot of energy and time into SAGE with the Pride Center. With regard to the homeless youth, I think, Nate hit the nail on the head. A good one third to a half of our homeless youth are LGBT. I feel like a good chunk of the other half are refugees from polygamy, and the Volunteers of America just broke ground, I believe this week, today I think, on their new resource center, which will have 30 overnight beds, and that's a huge asset to our community that's coming. And so I'm really excited about that. We live next door, my partner and I, and we operate our business next door, and we have long been supporters of the Volunteers of America because of the great programming they do. I would like to see maybe the City Council direct a little more resources through the Community Development Block grants, which we have to disperse every year, to these social services and
8 seconds.
that emphasize on LGBT issues, and maybe even figure out a way to get Pride Center and VOA to partner on homeless youth issues.
Thank you very much. I'm going to now offer you about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to do your elevator speech about how wonderful you are and why we should vote for you. Start with me.
So I talk about this a lot, but 18 years ago, my dad took me to City Hall for the first time to see Lee Martinez get sworn in as the first and only Latino to ever serve on City Council here in Salt Lake City. That experience had a profound impact on my life and developed my passion for service and leadership. I've been involved in our community for a number of years. I've been president of my neighborhood association. I'm currently vice chair of my local community council, the East Central Community Council. I serve on the Utah AIDS Foundation Board of Trustees. I also serve on the Library Board of Directors here in Salt Lake City, and I hope you enjoy the lovely facilities that we have here, and was just recently voted in as vice president of that organization. These are the experiences and the leadership that I really want to bring to Salt Lake City, and especially to the council. I want to bring a voice of diversity and inclusion to the City Council. I feel like we're a better city when we're a blended city, and we need to make sure that we advocate for things like affordable housing. We need to make sure that we advocate for things like fixing our infrastructure, taking a serious look at education, because really the foundation of a city begins with how you educate your kids. And really, the economic future depends on that as well, your quality and quantity of your workforce, and right now we're missing the boat with that. These are the reasons why numerous organizations have endorsed me. We have local union organizations, because I care about working families. And I feel like families and individuals need a livable wage in order to thrive and be successful in our city. These types of experiences and leadership qualities that I do have are the reasons why these organizations have endorsed me, including the Stonewall LGBT Democrats. These are the organizations that I feel like make a big difference in our community. They're the ones that I advocate for and have been a part of for many years. I really hope that you will look into my candidacy and please feel free to ask me any questions in the coming weeks and throughout the rest of this election. Thank you.
So I've been a lifelong ally and an advocate, and I also think I'm the only left-handed candidate running for council, and that's not disconnected. That for as long as I can remember, I've been left-handed, and that was not by choice. I just am left-handed, which I think is why I get it. And I have understood from the beginning that we just are who we are. So I would just like to say that allies also have a strong place in this community, and together we have done a ton. And I just want to recognize all the amazing work that's been done over the decades, and these wonderful people on stage who have worked so hard for this community and for our entire community. Equality matters to us all, and it affects us all for the better. It's extremely important for myself, for my family, partly just because I can see that change does happen. It sort of gladdens my heart again in all these days I get really discouraged about the state of the world, that we can see rapid and profound change, and we still have a ton to do. We're all also multidimensional people. We have lots of different components to ourselves, and I think we all benefit collectively from a city that's vibrant, that's safe, that has opportunity for all that has a great educational system and good, well-paying jobs, affordable and efficient housing, that we have clean air, that we have wonderful parks nearby where we can take our families, where we can walk our dogs, where we can just go hang out and get a little refreshment in green space. We need a healthy environment, we need walkable neighborhoods, we need good affordable transportation, energy efficient homes, and we really need a stable climate, and this is something that's critical to me. Collectively, I think we can all do better, and I am ready to be working on all of these issues for you. For 25 years I've been working on public service, and I see the service on the council as an extension of that. I think I have the experience to really make more of good things happen, and I would like to serve and be honored to serve as your next representative.
Someone pointed out to me that they didn't necessarily know all of my experience, and that could be true because I do a lot of work, but I don't always publicize it. And since we had Facebook, gosh, who knew? 8 years I spent as a planning and zoning commissioner for Salt Lake City, thousands of volunteer hours trying to weed through that myriad of rules and regulations and helping make a better city. I know intimately how the city works and doesn't work at times. For the last 3 years, I have been chair of the Downtown Alliance. I'm on the board there of the Downtown Merchants. And the Downtown Merchants, I work with the big ones and the little ones and help create a dialogue between everyone downtown, how to make our downtown better and more vibrant, and I've worked on that for many years. 27 years on KRCO, longest running women in music program in the United States. 18 years of directing and performing V-Day, raising over $300,000 for the Rape Recovery Center and YWCA. I am a rape and incest survivor. I have twin daughters and 4 grandkids. I was the editor of the first gay newspaper in town, called it QSaltLake. And the Royal Court, I was the very first Grand Duke for the Royal Court. I was raised by drag queens. And when Anita Bryant came to the State Fair in 1977, and she was singing Onward Christian Soldiers, us very frightened gays at the time got up, luckily because of the court behind us, and we stood up and turned our backs on her and we walked out. And that was our first big gay protest in Salt Lake City. And I get chills just even talking about it. I've lost over 200 friends to AIDS, and it is an organization that the Utah AIDS Foundation, I've helped. I started the Sub for Santa program and ran it myself. I had my friends fund it for 10 years before I handed it back over to the Utah AIDS Foundation. I was the first openly gay real estate agent in Utah, the first gay board of directors members for the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, and president of the Women's Council of Real Estate. And I'm pretty gender fluid. Thank you.
I am a small business owner here in District 4. I'm also an employer. And it has become clear to me that the small business community feels incredibly disenfranchised. For some reason, there's a widespread feeling that the city doesn't care about small businesses, that their voices aren't being heard, and that the concerns aren't being valued. I believe that small business is the backbone of our economy. I believe it is what provides the character and the quality and the vibrancy to our city, especially in an urban city like Salt Lake. And I know that I can personally be the bridge between City Hall and the small business community. Our businesses need to feel like they have support and that they have resources. I have a wealth of knowledge working with the city. With my business, we started in 2012, and that was relatively easy because my partner and I are resourceful, but I do think that it's time for a small business resource center within the city, a one-stop shop of sorts where you can go in and get out and have your business set up in under 24 hours. We've had experience growing our business. We went to community and economic development and received a loan at 4% interest, which is incredibly competitive. That allowed me to make investments in my business and grow and add employees. I think that since the city has increased that percentage rate to almost 12%, that is inaccessible to most small businesses. And most recently, my partner and I, we have partnered with we've collaborated, I should say, with other small businesses and the redevelopment agency of Salt Lake to address a blighted neighborhood and to reinvest all of our resources in the Central Ninth neighborhood. We're really excited about this project, but it has taken much too long to come to fruition. I think it's high time that the City Council takes action on the RDA and moves things forward on all projects. I'll just wrap up really quickly and say that District 4 needs a leader for downtown. I will be somebody that is active and engaged on all of the issues. Salt Lake City needs somebody that has a track record of getting things done. Decisions made today will affect our community for decades to come, especially with how much growth we have. I'm excited and I'm ready to lead Salt Lake City.
It's nice to be here. I was talking to my boss today. Like in introductions, I work for a government relations firm in DC. There's just 3 of us. I work from home, and then on the side of my brother and a friend, I started a small pie shop, and I can attest that it's really hard starting your own business. But as I was talking to my boss today, I said, he said, how's your election going? I said, it's going good. I have a forum tonight, the LGBT forum. And I said, I don't really want to throw out like the token, like, my best friend's gay thing, but I was like, so I don't really know how to navigate that, but he's like, well, tell him that you could just say that you work for a gay-owned business. And then I thought of it, I guess I do. But it's just something that I hadn't really thought about. It's not something that had ever mattered to me. When I first got this job, my boss said to me, he's like, before you take this job, I want you to think about this and know that I'm gay, and will that bother you? And here I am 4 years later, and it's been great. And I never had any reason to, going into it to look back or to worry about it, and I certainly don't now. And in terms of why I want to run for city council,
15 seconds.
I can see both sides of issues, and I can really be an advocate for both sides. I can stand up and tell people when they're wrong, when they don't understand. To stand up for those that need an advocate, whether it be Mormon, non-Mormon, East Side versus West Side, gay or straight. I really can be an advocate, and I can see both sides, and I have a lot of experience. And that's really, I grew up in Salt Lake in the Avenues, and I've been dealing with that for my whole life, having antagonism on both sides, and it's really made me who I am, and it makes me want to run for city council and be able to join groups together and help our city to progress, and I think we really can.
If you could please just join me in thanking all of the candidates. Short 5 to 10-minute break as we rearrange everything for the mayoral candidates, who they are all here, which is awesome. And so you may use the facilities or stretch your legs or get on the rider.